Hello, BookTube. It's Friday, and that means Friday Reads on BookTube, where people look at the reading that they've done in the last week, assess the numbers, assess the lay of the land, talk a little about the reading that they intend to do in the upcoming week or more. And I love Friday Reads. They are kind of a pause and an indrawn breath in our headlong reading world. I love that. I also love getting regular reminders of the contours of your reading. Uh, and uh, Friday Reads takes on an extra resonance when the Friday falls so close to the end of the month, right? Tomorrow is the end of April. It doesn't feel it at all intuitively here in Boston. It's been freezing cold for the last few days with howling winds. So it's punishment to be outside, especially if, like me, you have already stored away your winter clothes, and out of sheer stubbornness, you refuse to take them out of storage and put them back on. So you're just punishing yourself that way. Uh, when a Friday Reads happens so late in the month, I automatically start assessing the whole of the month and looking ahead to the whole of the next month. And I had a very, very good reading month in April. I don't know why, but it was very, very good, even by my standards. But this is still going to be a Friday Reads sauteed in guilt because there are still a number of April releases that I haven't read for one reason or another. And we'll go through all of the reasons. I have a few of them up here on the iPad mini that I want to show you as a kind of a weird, Sunday confession Friday Reads. And the first one is this. It's Bloodlands by Timothy Snyder. This is a brilliant book. This is a reread for me. And it's been reissued by the publisher because it deals with the true geography and psychogeography of the war in Europe in World War II, but also the landscape of the final solution, the landscape of the Holocaust. And I think one of the reasons why the publisher reissued this, aside from the fact that it is obviously a modern classic, I mean, it doesn't take more than 50 pages for you to know that you're reading a genuinely important book. But aside from that, I think maybe the publishers had an eye on this because so much of the action takes place in Ukraine. I don't need to know their reason. Anytime a publisher reprints a fantastic book, I'm right there. But I haven't done it. I was looking forward to rereading this, and I got a little ways in with the paperback copy that I got, and I haven't continued, and I want to do that. I'm hoping that all of these things are going to get done before May starts. I can hope, anyway. This next one is a novel. This is the latest by Garrison Keillor. This is Boomtown, the latest Lake Wobegon novel. I've read everything by this author. I don't even actually mostly like it, but like everybody else, when Lake Wobegon Days came out 80 million years ago, 40 years ago, I loved it. Thought it was utterly charming. And all of the Lake Wobegon books that have followed have seemed to me to be operating on the principle of diminishing returns. They've seemed to me to be mainly some kind of exercise on the part of the author, who, when it comes to this book, achieved a tiny moment of notoriety on social media because he talked back to a critic who reviewed this book negatively. Which reminds me to remind you, especially all of you would-be authors out there, when is the proper time for an author to respond to a critic? Say it with me now. Never. Don't ever do that. Never, unless the critic gets a fact wrong, which is not going to happen in a stupid novel. No one's going to care about whether or not they got a character's name wrong in a stupid novel. So in fiction, never do it. Never. It can't do anything but make you look bad. But that doesn't bear on the novel. I will, needless to say, go into this with low expectations, but it could be that it's got a satirical take on the 21st century modern American Main Street. The title leads me to think that maybe some niche, insufferable boomlet type things happen in Lake Wobegon, which might be interesting provided Garrison Keillor has not lost a step or two, narratively speaking. And I don't know that I can say that he hasn't. So we shall see. It won't take long to do, is my whole point. Bloodlands will take long, even on a reread. It's a dense, incredibly moving book. Boomtown, Garrison Keillor's latest book, won't take long. And this next book won't take long either. And I meant to have it done by now. But every time I would try, I would say there's got to be something better you can do with your time. But that's not the way to do it. I have set a remit for myself, same as the rest of you. I have decided to mark out the rough outlines of my reading priorities and then stick to them with all the reading energy I have at my disposal, which is quite a bit. And for me, I have consciously decided that my remit is new releases in the American book market in the 15 or 16 genres that I read. I didn't say good new releases. That remit is all of them. I want to try to read as many of them as I can. Of course, I can't read them all, but I want to try and read as many of them as possible. It's a side benefit only to me that by trying to read as many of them as possible, I read more of them than any other single person does. That's only a side benefit. That only counts at the end of the year when I'm summing the year up. What it mainly means to me is that I am free at least a little bit from that horrible feeling that other new release readers get, that they can't begin to keep up, that they can't barely keep their nose above water. I can barely do that. And this book falls under that remit. I just haven't done it because I know how much it's going to annoy me. I know that already. This is by Dave Rubin, celebrated hypocrite, charlatan, grifter, idiot Dave Rubin, and it's called Don't Burn This Country. And the subtitle is Surviving and Thriving in Our Woke Dystopia. And the subtitle sort of gives away the game. I was fixating on the subtitle that has stopped me from reading this book. Because I already know how dumb this is going to be, how deceitful it's going to be. Woke dystopia gives the game away. When this guy has already encountered what the real dystopian elements in this country are, they're the elements that have been sending him and his husband death threats for their announcement that they're adopting 2 children. That's the dystopian element. Those elements get power if they're part of your city council. If they in fact make it illegal where you live for you to do what you just did, and you have to give those kids up after you've come to love them and taken care of them, well, is that a dystopia, or is it that you can't say, the N-word on social media? Which of those things is more dystopian? What if the civic ordinance isn't just that you have to give up your 2 adopted kids, but that not only can you not be married to your husband anymore, but that both of you are already in commission of felonies just for being who you are? This is going to be a lot of right-wing grift circuit scaremongering that not only doesn't look at the very real dangers on the other side of the ideological spectrum, the side that Dave Rubin claims to be part of. They want nothing to do with him, and he doesn't seem to care or notice that. Not only will it have nothing to do with that, but it also won't correctly address the woke dystopian elements that are actually out there. He actually won't look at those either. It's just going to be a complete waste of time. But it does fall in my remit, and if I start ignoring books because I hate their authors or because I think they're going to be predictable, well, who shall escape whipping? I mean, how many books would I not read if that were true? I have to do it. It won't take long to do. Okay, then there's this next one. This is by Philip Gorski and Samuel Perry, and I have not got to this, and I should. It's important, and I want to show you the book, but I also have the bean in the picture. This is The Flag and the Cross, White Christian Nationalism and the Threat to American Democracy. An obviously important subject. It's an obviously important subject. I've read lots of other new, in the last 5 years, there have been, predictably enough, quite a few books on this subject, and a lot of them have been really good, really insightful. I don't know anything about these authors, but I definitely want to read this. I just haven't got to it. It feels very, very guilt-inducing. And if that's guilt-inducing, what about this next one? Bean, you're slurping again. Bean, you have to cut it out. It's so distracting, little girl. It is, baby. It's so distracting. Hi. You're just in a slurpy mood? Is that it? Oh, baby girl. Anyway, this next one, I have no excuse for not having read. This is right in my alley. I haven't done it. I will. I will read it this weekend. This is by Riley Black, and it is called The Last Days of the Dinosaurs, an asteroid extinction and the beginning of our world. And that's all this is about. It's I would imagine that it's a summary of all that we currently know about when the dinosaurs died, how they died, how life rebounded, everything above the K2 iridium boundary, where that is, what that life is, how the world recovered from an unbelievable asteroid impact. I've read every other book on this subject. It's entirely up my alley. It's a popular book on dinosaurs, one of only 3 coming out this year, and yet I haven't got to it. I've been prioritizing other things, and when you prioritize other things, sometimes the stuff you love just goes by the wayside, even though you love it. I will get to it. I will do it. This next one we just saw on this channel recently. It is an April release. I should have read it, the other night the day that I got it, but I didn't end up doing that. I ended up reading other things. This is by David de Jong, and it's Nazi Billionaires. And it's about the most wealthy people in Nazi Germany and how they managed almost to a single person to retain their wealth and not be punished by the world. They spend, 6 years financing the Nazi war machine and then just go right on with their brands, often without even so much as a public mea culpa. It's a fascinating subject. I don't want this to be a holdover. This strikes me like Bloodlands as a dense read, something that will take me a little time. So I'm not sure that I'll do all of these this weekend. This next one, for instance, will be easy to do. It's a bigger book, a beautiful thing. I don't know if we've seen it on this channel. It's a lovely thing, very much something for you to go and buy. But it's not going to be much of a reading task to this. This is by David Litt-Schwager, and it's got essays from a whole bunch of people, and it's Octopus, Seahorse, Jellyfish. It's an oversized picture book from the folks at National Geographic. So it's absolutely full of beautiful, beautiful photography, much like that beauty on the cover there. And it's all about cephalopods. So it's all about these weird alien beings who have lived on Earth for a very, very long time and who are all kinds of smart. All kinds of smart. They are some of the most intelligent beings on the planet and totally alien to anything, any kind of a setup that humans might understand. And yet, often able to make contact of a kind, first contact of a kind. They are fascinating beings, in other words, and this is the great modern. They get lavish pictorial treatments with scientific articles weighing in and experts writing essays and whatnot on a regular basis. This is the latest one. This will be the one this year. It won't take long to read. Definitely a thing for you to want. This next one, much like the Dave Rubin book, is something that I feel compelled myself to read. I am not grudging my own reading plan. I love my reading plan, but I take the good with the bad, and there is bad. Some of you must be the same way, right? Some of you, like for instance, are dedicated romance readers. That means if there's a new release in romance, you'll probably read it, even if there's a chance that it's really bad. Same thing with, you history readers. There are going to be new history titles that are dumb or derivative, one-dimensional. You're going to read them anyway. I feel certain that my rationale is understandable. And this is another example of a book where I pretty much know what I'm going to get ahead of time, and it's just going to infuriate me. It'll take an hour to read. I'm sure that it's poorly written and thin. This is Silent Invasion by Dr. Deborah Birx. The untold story of the Trump administration, COVID-19, and preventing the next pandemic before it's too late. This is what one of you writing about this author referred to as her rehabilitation tour, because she was one of Trump's quislings at a time and in a capacity where being a quisling was incredibly dangerous to the huge population of the United States. And she did it anyway. Rather than get fired, rather than get blacklisted, rather than have Trump supporters put bombs in her mailbox or come to her door and start shooting when she opens the door, rather than facing any of that, she decided to lie about Donald Trump, to lie about his administration's non-response to a deadly pandemic. She knew as much as anybody in those early days could know about how serious this was, as much as Trump knew how serious it was. And she went along with the stupid, utterly mendacious policies of his administration. And this is her book in which she essentially wants to try and tell the reader that she didn't actually do that, as if we weren't all watching, as if, thanks to the Trump mishandling of COVID-19, we all had no choice but to watch. We had nothing else to do. It's that same basic cognitive split seems to happen with anybody connected with Donald Trump. They just, like he does, they just seem to summarily, willfully forget that audio and visual recording technology exists. And that we all have access to it. It's like Trump especially, but all of the creatures in his orbit are already living in the kind of North Korea where the dear leader says what is and isn't real, and the people have no access to know otherwise. They have no access to check on whether or not what the dear leader says is true or false. That isn't yet true in America, and yet they're all jumping the gun, saying, well, I didn't say that. I don't know what you're talking about. Advise the president on martial law. I never said any such thing. Tell the president to resign. I never said any such thing. It's like they're already living in that American version of North Korea, but it isn't here yet. So the cognitive dissonance doesn't apply to the rest of us who get to remember that this lickspittle sat silent and refused to contradict the president when he said that people should inject bleach to fight COVID-19. She sat there silent as a stone. Anyway, see, I'm already upset. I haven't even read the book, but fortunately, I don't think it'll take long. And this next one will be restorative. The dinosaur book will be restorative in its own way, serious though it is. Bloodlands will be restorative. This will also be restorative. This is a new romance novel by an author that has never written anything I didn't like. This series I really like. I just haven't got around to the new book. This is Shadowfire in Christine Feehan's Shadow Riders series, about a really wealthy, sort of glamorous crime family that has a supernatural power. They have a supernatural element to their success that not everybody knows about. And Christine Feehan and her fans of this series want to say that that supernatural element involves basically superpowers, but really it's that they're all hot. That's a pretty weird superpower. Not all families have that. This is very breathless stuff. Always a great palate cleanser. I think I remember the last couple of Shadow Rider novels well enough so that I'll just jump into this. I'm pretty sure I do. And then we'll finish up with this last one, which is just an egregious overstep on my part. An oversight. I just didn't get to it. And so it's on my agenda. It won't take long to read. Most of these things won't take long to read. A dedicated day and night of reading should get this done. But this is 6 Walks in the Footsteps of Henry David Thoreau by Ben Shattuck, which is not only about Henry David Thoreau, which means I should have read it long since, but it was also already reviewed in the Christian Science Monitor, not by me, but still. This is the author grappling with his own personal wounds by communing with Henry David Thoreau in a handful of different settings. Fairly hackneyed premise, but the reviewer in the Christian Science Monitor certainly thought that this was well done, feelingly, effectively done. So even if it weren't feeling and effectively done, there's still no reason for me not to have gotten to it yet, but I have a chance. There's still a couple of days in April before I launch into May and try and do better, which is kind of, that's the book that we'll finish up with, except that it's just kind of weird that I'm talking about any of these shortcomings at all, because April has been such a good reading month. It just goes to show, it underscores, that no matter how dedicated I am to that remit of reading, where I am reading new releases, mostly new releases, I set aside 20% time for older books and rereads, but it's mostly new releases and it's a large amount of them, that no matter how dedicated I am to that remit, I'm still going to fall behind. Obviously, there are way too many books that come out. Books come out by a fire hose every month. There's no way that I can get them all. But I'm going to try. I'm going to clear up all of these, and I'm going to try and clear these up by Monday. Monday will already be a day into May, and so I'm setting myself up to fail in May as well. But I will try, and I will try even harder to be a little bit better in May. So the big things, there are a couple of big things on here. I mean, the Dave Rubin book, the Deborah Burks book, who wouldn't put those off? But a dinosaur book? A Christine Feehan novel? I shouldn't be letting these things sit. So that's my Friday reads for today. That is also kind of a wrap-up of the month of April. We've got a little bit of time left, a lot of reading time left for me, so I'm going to try and take advantage of that, and then we'll start talking about May books. Thank you, BookTube.